I built this bandsaw on a tiny budget using a drill, a grinder, a big grinder and a welder. Though I also have a cut-off grinder which speeded things up a lot. I think this design is as simple as it can be. It doesn't need to be very complicated because I don't have much work for it really, but it still has to work. So let me talk you through a few of the basic design elements. The saw stays put and the log is pulled through the saw, which is the reverse of what you would normally see in small mills like this. I chose this arrangement because it overlaps nicely with the plan to have rails through the barn anyway. So I just have to put the log onto a trolley anywhere along the line and it's ready to go. It seems to me that there are some disadvantages and some advantages to this arrangement. First, the disadvantages. The track has to be twice the length of your log when you arrange things like this. A log's length before and after the blade, but the track needs only to be narrow with short sleepers. The trolleys are obviously not as stable as the conventional bandsaw bed, so rolling a heavy log onto them is more tricky, though a ramp on one side would do the trick, especially if there's something to stop it going too far. The same when it comes to rotating the log halfway through the cut. It's more awkward on trolleys than on a wider floor. I've made this lifting frame which helps a lot. If I was planning to do lots of work with this, then I'd make an area with a raised platform on both sides, and that would solve the problem. Plus, because I'm using trolleys, I had to come up with a completely different sort of log hold down system. And because I want to do other things with these trolleys as well, I want the hold downs to be removable. But that wasn't a big deal, and so far they seem to be working fine. Now the advantage of having the saw itself fixed is obvious. It's just much more stable and tiny adjustments can be made that are permanent. If you want to move this heavy contraption up and down a track and maintain solidity and rigidity at every point, you would need a whole lot more steel, both in the frame and in the track bed too. So the main advantage is the saving on materials and time. Well, also, you don't have to push the mill itself, just push the log, which obviously gets lighter every time you take away a plank. A few people suggested I needed some sort of winch to move the log, but that's completely unnecessary. The push-pull stick is perfect. There really isn't any pressure needed, and half the time I'm actually holding back the log. With smaller logs, I could probably pull it through with one finger. Right, the next topic is the power source. This is an 11 horsepower petrol engine. It cost €150, about the same in dollars I think. An equivalent electric motor would be much nicer to work with because it'd be quieter, but it would cost multiples of that and I'd need a different power supply too. So it's not really an option. Yes, I could have used a car engine, but then you'd be talking about much more weight, probably more power than you need, and they don't have a regulator. So I think this petrol engine is the best option for now anyway. Direct transmission to the tyre. I was expecting more trouble with this than I've had. I went for it initially to save money. You just need one pulley and one V-belt. So this is far cheaper than the normal way with a shaft behind the drive wheel with its own set of bearings and a second pulley. But the problem is that I needed a big pulley here or the wheel would be spinning too slowly. And this big pulley grips the belt so well it won't slip even when it's slack. So either the belt is on and everything's spinning, or it's not on and I have to put it on when it's already spinning round. There isn't really a clutch or a neutral position, so that's not ideal, but it's not a serious problem at all either. I just slow down the engine when it's not being used. And so we come to the car wheels, which work well and cost nothing, thanks Mike. Now the alternative would require purpose-made bandsaw wheels, rubber tyres for them, a shaft and bearings for both. So using these car wheels represents a really big saving, and they do work even if they're not very pretty. They are pumped quite hard. I'm not sure how hard they should be, so I tried 60 psi in this one and 40 in this one. Both seemed fine, so I don't know which one is better. Perhaps it doesn't really matter as long as they're not actually soft. Now we get to the tracking and the tension. Tracking is done by slackening these bolts and slewing the wheel around slightly. It pivots around this fixed point and then tightening it down again, which works fine, and now that it's set up, shouldn't really need doing again for a while, I think, unless the tyre pressure changes or something. And the tensioning is done through this bolt. This frame slides along these pipes, taking the wheel assembly with it. It's really simple and everything works, but I think I underestimated how much pressure was needed on the blade. So next time I would make this frame longer and maybe heavier to minimize the leverage that comes on it under pressure. It basically is trying to twist, and even a tiny amount will affect the tracking. This is a thin piece of aluminium resting crossways on the blade. Measuring down from the ends to the track shows if the blade is level or not. It is now, after a couple of shims went in under the frame. And lubricating it and cooling it is done with this sophisticated yoke. It's a bucket of water on a hook. The water dribbles down here and comes out over the guide bearings. The guide bearings themselves were working fine, but actually a couple of them seem to have got stuck, so perhaps they've worn out already. I don't really know. I'll investigate that one. Originally I did have these set too high. They were in line between the bottom edge of each tyre. I learned that it's better to have them slightly lower than that, so that the blade actually has to go around them, which cuts down on the wave that the blade wants to make. Okay, so if all of this worked, why did I have so much trouble in the beginning? Why did I get cuts like this? I tried lots of things, but in the end I think it was just that the blade tips touching the rubber tyres was messing with the set. As you know, the set is the amount the teeth are bent. Some are bent up just a bit, and some are bent down by the same amount, and some are left straight. This makes the cut wider than the main part of the blade, and so it doesn't get stuck. Just the act of running over the tyre was enough to unbend very slightly all the teeth that touched the tyre, 1/3 of the total, which meant that there was more cutting downwards than upwards, and the blade dived into the wood. I couldn't see the difference, but when I reset the teeth with my little saw set, it bowed upwards instead, which showed me that although I'd overcompensated, I was on the right track. So I dug away under the teeth into the tyre. I started by trying to grind the tyre away, which was noisy and smelly. So then I just moved the blade back until it was over a groove in the tyre design. Except in order to do that, I had to move the blade guides back too, and that meant cutting them off and rebuilding them. And that still didn't solve the problem completely, because the wheels didn't have matching tyres. I had to put washers behind one of the wheels to get the groove in the right place. Actually, a chisel was the best tool to pare away unwanted rubber. Now the teeth are not touching anything, and there's still enough rubber under the main part of the blade to support it. The first blades I tried didn't help either. I don't know what they are for, but they're incredibly soft and flexible. Veneers maybe? I don't know. I since changed to these ones, which were more like a wood miser blade, and they work really well. Except I haven't found a way to reset these ones. I hit a tiny nail and damaged my new blade, causing the cut to dive instantly. But when I tried to reset the teeth, they just broke off. So I need to make a different kind of saw set, I guess. So many things to do. This is me putting apart the 2 planks and finding the offending nail, which was tiny considering the amount of damage it did. I think that's it. It seems to be working fine, but I've only tried a little bit of hardwood. Here's some ash and some elm basically, and the spruce. I don't actually have anything else. We don't have very many trees here. If anyone nearby watching this has some logs, well, hello. I spent really very little money on this bandsaw, though exactly how much depends on how much of the track you want to include. 300 or 400 euro, I guess, for parts and materials. And I'm adding to the track when I can afford it. Thanks very much, by the way, those who have contributed via Patreon. A new bit of tracks going in this week, I think. All in all, it's been a really nice project, and now I have a small sawmill, which is going to come in handy for all sorts of other projects. Just wait and see. So, of course, I would recommend you all get stuck in and build yourself one too, but don't ask for plans. If it breaks and cuts off large chunks of you, I don't really want to be responsible. Anyway, thanks to everybody who watched this little series. I've learned such a lot, and I'm really pleased that I started. And it took probably a bit longer than I thought, but it really is quite manageable. With all you need is a few basic workshop tools, and there you go. Good luck.